Now, today we are with SEATINI, and we're going to discuss and look into the NRM Manifesto with a deep analysis. Well, in studio with me, I have Jen S. Nalunga, who is Executive Director. And you're very welcome, Jen. A very good morning.
Good morning, Nora, and good morning, our viewers.
I'm busy looking at the manifesto, and some of the things that are in the manifesto, things to do with peace and stability, and we also see how good governance and democracy and security is something that the current government has really put on the forefront. Peace and stability. That's one thing that we always hear about, especially when it comes to the NRM. It's a common place for them to go. But what I'm trying to understand is the linkage between peace and security and economics, because we are now looking in the perspective of economics. How are these interlinked? Someone may think it's obvious, because when there is peace,
of course,
the people can thrive and businesses thrive in such places. But we need to go a little more deep into that. Why do you think this is very important?
it is. In fact, for the very reason, Nora, you have talked about, there can't be any economic activity when there is no peace and security. And we have seen that. We have seen all these wars, in northern Uganda, in Luwero, the economy suffers, the people suffer, the economy breaks down. So peace and security are prerequisite for economic development. You can't do any business, you can't do any activities without peace and security. So those are the linkages which are really, really, really critical.
Yes, I see. The other thing that struck me about the NRM Manifesto, it has a lot to do with job creation. Now, this is a song that we have heard time and again, especially when it comes to this government, job creation. Now, with all honesty, Jen, just tell me, how do you think this is going to be done in this regard?
Okay. The issue of creating wealth and jobs is very critical. Although the manifesto says that things have never been better, we can do better, we can do better. We might be in a good place, looking at where we are coming, but we can definitely do better.
Yes.
There are still challenges. There are still challenges of unemployment, still challenges of inequality. But maybe also to go back, one of the challenges is the way the indicators of development have been put in this document. It's so much on GDP, the gross domestic product, which just looks at the value of goods and services in a country in a certain period of time. It doesn't care who has produced, who hasn't produced. Issues of domestic resource mobilization, which has gone up, but again, such indicators don't show who has paid and who hasn't paid, who is bearing the burden of domestic resource mobilization. They talk about issues of increased exports, which is okay, which is good. Exports have increased, but who is contributing to the increased exports? On whose burden? Is it the women who are sowing the vanilla flowers, who can't even produce their food because they are sowing the vanilla flowers to fertilize them? So we need also to, first of all, assess just honestly where we are.
Yes.
Are we there?
Yes.
Where we are? Because sometimes, Nora, when you are not candid and true to yourself, to say, okay, this is who I am.
Yes.
I have these challenges. I have walked this far. And we shouldn't forget the fact that we are coming from a long way, and it's clear in the manifesto now. And we also know, some of you might not know, we have come a long way. But we need to be candid and say, there is another long way
to go.
A long way
Yes.
to go. Uganda is one of the least. People can say we are the fastest growing country. Throwing around these figures, it's okay. But we are still a poor country.
And
we are one of the least developing countries.
It is very interesting because you said we need to first really acknowledge where we are, much as we have come from far, but we need to be realistic enough to understand this is where we are. And that is sometimes when we put about statistics like that, it's very easy to explain anything using statistics,
exactly,
depending on which direction you want to take.
Exactly.
You understand?
Exactly.
And so we can talk about GDP and all these other things that really seem so nice on paper, but like you were explaining, who is exactly contributing to this? And does GDP actually mean that the welfare of the citizens have actually changed?
Has it changed?
The cost of living, how is it? And all these other things. So it's very, like you said, it's very important. Before we actually realize where we want to go, we need to understand where are we?
Where are we? What are those challenges? For example, challenges of unemployment for the youth. It's a problem. It's a challenge.
It is known like world over.
Exactly.
World over. And Uganda is not any exception to that. Actually, of late, it has been worse.
Exactly.
It was getting,
with COVID and all that. And also, there are challenges facing the economy. That the economy is contracting because of COVID. We used to get a lot of money from tourism, has contracted, from remittances from the diaspora, it has contracted, So there are all those challenges, and we need to be candid and say this is where we are. Things are not working out. There are challenges on the table. Then we look at what needs to be done.
Surely. That is so well said. We are actually still looking at things to do with job creation and the challenges that come with that. But one thing that I also want to look at, one of the things that the manifesto actually stresses is the issue to do with integration. When we talk about integration, economic integration, we are talking about the nearest to us is the East African integration, and it is a very challenging place to be as Uganda to discuss economic integration if we have not actually had very good ties with our neighbors. For example, during the COVID-19 at the beginning, we had issues between Uganda and Rwanda and then the other neighboring states. How do you think this is going to work in that regard?
Okay. The issue of integration is also the fifth focus area, economic and political integration. And for us as SEATINI organization, we do support regional integration. We are Pan-Africanists, and we know in order to survive as a country within the very dynamic and competitive global situation, we need to integrate as East Africa, as Africa. It's really true. But already before we went into COVID, we had challenges within our regional integration. The Rwanda-Uganda border was closed, and there were no prospects. We don't hear any discussion around that. It's like it's a done deal. In fact, my organization, together with another organization, EASI and SafeRoad, we took the Uganda government and the Rwanda government to the East African Court of Justice. And our issue was really, you just can't wake up one done close the border. You know, how many people's livelihoods have been affected, you know. So in fact, our request there, our prayer, was that this should never happen again, and that there should be, the countries should be penalized, those who go against the regional, the ESC treaty. So regional integration is very important, but again, we need to address the current challenges. We had challenges around the trade wars, the milk, the sugar, you know. How do we address that? We need to do that because we need those markets. We need the regional markets. And also the fact that as Uganda, we are landlocked, although we can be land-linked because we are in the middle, but we need the coast. We need Kenya, we need Tanzania. So we need a cordial regional environment which supports our economy. But again, when it comes to regional integration, it should be clear that regional integration isn't for saying, oh, we are integrated. Mm-hmm. No, it's a market. It's about business, you know, and that's the basis of regional integration. It's trade, it's economy. Mm-hmm. So you need to know, if I'm integrated, what am I selling in that larger market?
What are the benefits that come with me being
exactly integrated, you know, because at the end of the day, sometimes you can end up being a market for others, you know, an entire market, and your economy can collapse just because you have opened, because regional integration is about opening. It also includes other areas where you integrate, you cooperate in education, in health, in environment, you know, but at the end of that day, it's about trade. And we need to position ourselves. In fact, Nora, when you talk about regional integration, it's also beyond. The manifesto also talks about that very clearly. Talks about the East African community, talks about, we have another tripartite, COMESA, SADC in South Africa, then the ESC. That's also a configuration which we have. Those are also, you know, opportunities for trade. We are also negotiating the Continental Free Trade Area, the whole continent. But what's missing out in the manifesto when it comes to markets, the regional, the Continental Free Trade Area, the manifesto also talks about the European Union, talks about Russia, China, US, you know, it's very broad, you know, those are all markets. But there is a difference between market access and market entry. By the way, we have all these markets. We have the ESC, we have the tripartite, we are negotiating the CFTA. The European Union told us, Uganda, you are a poor country. You bring everything you want, except arms. And we told them, yeah, we don't have the arms anyway, you know. But the market is there. But before we went into lockdown, EU had told us, don't bring your vegetables here. Don't. We said, okay, we'll put our house in order. Yeah. We tried to put our house in order. We got the same problem. Until we said, okay, it's called a self-ban. You are the one who just says, okay. You say, okay, because the moment EU says never again, you are losing that market. You know? So before we went into lockdown, we are looking at how we strengthen our standards to be able to enter that market. So we have market access. We have the AGOA market. You know the AGOA. Remember the AGOA girls. I don't know whether you were still young or whether you were in primary, but we had AGOA girls who were taking, you know, some clothes to America. The market is there. We are not using it. What I'm trying to say is that the manifesto doesn't really look at how we can be able to enter and sustain ourselves in those various markets. And maybe we can talk about that deeper, the gap in the manifesto regarding that market entry and sustaining our presence in those markets.
That is very interesting. What do you think is one of the main issues when it comes to economic integrations? Why is it that we cannot tap into this opportunity or position ourselves better to get into these opportunities that are brought by integrations?
Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Nora. Maybe what we didn't talk about when you were introducing me, it's about our organization.
Yes.
Our organization is Southern and Eastern African Trade Information and Negotiations Institute. It's a mouthful.
It is.
That's why we talk about just SEATINI Uganda, because we have an office in Nairobi, an office in Zimbabwe, but the offices are independent. But we have the same ideology, we believe in the same, we do the same work.
Yes.
So SEATINI work on economic issues to ensure that economic policies work for the people. And when we talk about the people, we mean you, Nora, me as Jane, the youth, the women, the rural women, So we break it down, because like you said about statistics, when you look at the economy broadly, it's doing well. GDP is going up and you say, yeah, we okay. But there are some people who are not okay. So unless you break it down, you can't touch who is, ailing, who is not benefiting. Yet, even this manifesto talks about inclusive development. Maybe what they didn't say, we don't leave no one behind, but they talk about inclusive development.
Yeah.
So we need to make it inclusive. So when it comes to the issue of markets, because markets are very, very important, unless you link production to markets, then production collapses. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
If anything doesn't have a market, it will collapse and people will leave. Take an example, our maize. People, the moment they grow maize and the price goes down, most people, especially the young people, they leave. They sell the land, they buy borders, because the market is not right.
Yes.
So what you have said is true. The manifesto looked at a range, that's the ESC, the CFTA, the continental African market, the US, EU, and all that. But markets are specific.
Yeah.
You don't talk about the EU market. You talk about, is it in Netherlands? Are you going to take to a supermarket?
Yes.
So markets are specific and require specific products. When you look at the manifesto, there is a list. Millet, Irish potatoes,
Yes.
It's a long list. And for my belief, we need, they talks about diversification, but you can't diverse so, it's a very long list. We need to specialize in a way. And I'm not saying you discard other products, but let me give you an example.
Yes.
The EU, one time EU gave us a sugar quota. EU was giving quotas, used to give quotas. They gave us a sugar quota of 5,000 tons, metric tons, to take, and the price was higher than the world market price. But they told us, don't buy on the world market and bring, the anjawulo. You buy here, you grow the sugar cane, process it so that you can have jobs. Process it. Then bring it to us.
Yeah.
We never sent even a grain of sugar, you know. We didn't, because we didn't mobilize our production. Mauritius was given a sugar quota. For them, I think they were given around 48,000 metric tons. Mauritius is a small island.
Yeah.
They have been able to fulfill that quota because it adds value to their economy, because it has backward and forward linkages. You grow the sugar cane, you process it, you make sugar, you export, there is a ready market. So we are still lacking in the way we are utilizing our markets because we are not organized back home. No, like I said, a market requires a product which is specific with specific standards.
So it's not just a matter of having all this list of crops and
then list of markets.
Oh, yes. Without narrowing it down.
Then
this
there
goes
has to
here.
Be exactly.
There's an incident that happened with vanilla some time back.
Exactly.
It's exactly what I'm saying, you know.
So
farmers were actually encouraged to grow vanilla, and then at a certain point everyone had vanilla, and then the prices went down, and then there was no market, and then it was a mess.
Exactly. So markets are negotiated.
Yeah.
You negotiate a market, you know, and you know the specification standards. For example, our vegetables to the European Union, they will say we don't want minimum residue level. Don't use that pesticide. This is how you handle that product. It's very, very specific. So what the manifesto doesn't is how to link the product, the specific product, to the specific market. And then you mobilize production. Our production is largely subsistence. The manifesto talks a lot about this subsistence. And they say subsistence is not good, you know, and they want to integrate it into the modern money economy.
They talk about so much about commercialization of agriculture, and how this is going to actually help lift up the common person, especially down from the grassroots, because it has a lot to do with agriculture, mechanization, so that it's commercialized in order to lift people from subsistence kind of living. But how is that working out?
But you see, the biggest challenge facing Uganda, not just the NRM, facing Uganda, is how we can be able to make subsistence farming profitable again, because it has ever been profitable.
It used to be.
Yes, again. And there are people who say, you know, subsistence farming it isn't working. But like the saying goes, you cut your coat according to the clothes you have.
Yes.
You can't have 1 meter of clothes and you say you want a jacket like yours and mine, long sleeved with a collar. You have 1 meter. Uganda, what we have are subsistence farmers. How do we make them profitable? You know, how do we make them profitable? For me, the model we haven't yet got the right model. We had it. You mobilize small-scale producers around products. Coffee, for me, my home, the courtyard.
Yes.
Part of the courtyard is cemented. And you find that a lot in homes, old homes in Masaka. Cement, you put coffee there, you know. You know, farmers were mobilized to be able to achieve the standards, to be able to produce.
So subsistence farming isn't bad.
It is.
But just need to get the right model.
But you know what? We have no alternative. Whether you know, you can't say subsistence farming is bad. It's like saying this knife it doesn't work. I throw it away. Sharpen it.
Exactly.
Sharpen. It's a tool. So it's what we have.
Yeah.
And there is no way you can move people for the land. Where are you taking them?
That is it.
Because already now we have a challenge of rural urban migration. They come into the urban areas, there are no jobs. In fact, the manifesto, which I found interesting, you can't say rural urban migration is a plus. That's development. No, people are just running away, but some of them are running from the frying pan into fire because they are going into slum areas. There are no schools, there is no sanitation, no nothing. You know, so we need to make sure we make the rural areas productive. And here, I don't see that. I don't see that because today, just take an example. We talked about maize. Today, maize, there is no minimum price. You know, in fact, when there is a bumper harvest, the farmers have committed a crime.
Oh, yeah.
It's a crime.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because
the prices just
go down. There are no markets.
No
They have no storage facilities. And for 30 years, there are no storage facilities. Farmers keep their maize in the gardens, you know, where they are storing, because the houses are the stores, you know. So we need to make that right, because our economy, whatever we do, we are talking about assembling cars, but the basis of our economy is agriculture, and we need to make it. We need to make it right.
Let's talk a little bit about industrialization. It is the engine for economic growth. And when we talk about industrialization, we also can't help but talk about job creation. And this is something that the NRM Manifesto really highlights. The issue is, how is this going to be done? Or who should be in the steering wheel for this, you know?
Okay. Industrialization is critical. In fact, Uganda and Africa as a whole, they have been talking about structural transformation. Yeah. Structural transformation is where you structurally transform your economy. You know, in biology, they talked about the pupa, the larva pupa, and the butterfly. That's what they call structural transformation. And when you look at the manifesto, it's clear from production to value addition, then to trade. That's how an economy should work. But they also talk about broad industrialization, assembling of cars and all that. And again, when it comes to industrialization, like you have said, that's where ideally, that's where the jobs are. But the whole issue really which we need to, there are a number of issues which needs to be analyzed. They talk about, one, the whole issue of import substitution. You import substitute. Instead of bringing imports, you produce them. You produce them here, and then you reduce on your import bill. They have, it's clear that there are a number of products which have been earmarked for import substitution. Import substitution is good because it reduces on the trade deficit. For example, Uganda will have been importing all this Nora, what you are putting on. I know all of you is from outside, but we have the cotton. We have the cotton, even the buttons. We have our cows. We can be able to make buttons. So import industrialization is good, but the clarity on what to add value to is very important. And for me, I think when we are adding value, we need to look at the backward and forward linkages so that you promote production, Because the moment you add value, for example, in pineapples, just recently, even now, you buy 10 pineapples, 10,000, 5,000. I used to feel really bad because I think if I buy it on the street here, Kamocha,
Yes.
how much have they bought it from?
Kayunga.
From Kayunga. So if we can be able to add value, and we package, and we say, it means the farmer in Kayunga will get more money. But again, it goes back to securing markets. That farmer, that product which you have added value on can't compete on the market when somebody is bringing powder from China and you mix and you say this is passion fruit. It won't compete.
Yes.
So we need to address that our products can't compete on the market when our domestic market is as open as college gets, anything comes in. So we need to be clear. If we are adding value to our oranges and pineapples, that means you need to do something about those people who mix flavors.
Yeah.
I don't see that here. Another issue when it comes to industrialization is the model. In the manifesto, there are parks, industrial parks. Namave, where. This model of industrialization has been, I don't know whether you have heard of Hawassa Industrial Park in Ethiopia. It's huge.
Yeah.
But they assemble. Usually industrial parks are for assembling. You assemble and you take to HM. These stores, H&M, Spencer, Marks and Spencer,
Yeah.
So we need also to analyze what kind of industrialization model do we need based on our challenges, because our challenges are production, not export per se. We shouldn't look at that we want to increase exports, but we want to create jobs, increase production, and decent jobs. We have done an analysis on the Hawassa Park. They assemble. In fact, it's like they are Goa assembling. You bring, you assemble, you export. Then you write, we have exported so much to AGOA. But how has that impacted on the economy? You pay the workers, there is no minimum wage. You pay them very badly. Living conditions are not good. You are not sourcing. You are not sourcing locally. So it's an enclave, but you are exporting. They bring in the materials. Sometimes they already cut. You assemble. So we need to be careful when we talk about industrialization. And industries are now relocating from China, from Asia, from Bangladesh, those countries. They are coming to Africa because of our cheap labor. So we need to be very careful that if we are doing industrialization, it isn't for export and figures that we have exported so much, but it's for those backward linkages, increasing production so that those people who are producing stay on the land and produce food for us. You and me, Nora, we should make sure that those people stay on the farm. Let them produce the coffee. But when they are producing coffee, they are producing the matoke, they are producing the beans, they are producing the potatoes, and we are enjoying food.
Exactly. Yes.
In fact, Nora, when you look at our economy, it's the rural areas which are subsidizing the towns.
The urban areas.
Yes. You go to the village with your car, you bring a tin of beans, you bring the bananas. In fact, sometimes you just say, the boat is, it's full.
It's full, I can't take anymore.
But they are bringing the cassava. But what have you taken there? A bar
of soap.
1 bowl of soap, 2 kilograms of sugar, So we need to make sure that the people stay on the land, but they have to get an income. So that whole lineup from production to value addition to export has to bear in mind that we want to create decent jobs. Today, there is no minimum wage. And we have been talking about that. In fact, we have another case court here. You know, we believe in SEATINI that rights are fought for. Advocating, we do advocacy.
And you know, it's very interesting because as you were discussing, as you were talking about industrialization, and I looked into the NRM Manifesto, which I have. It just hit me because I was trying to think. The NRM Manifesto is actually talking about industrialization, commercialization, and then there is a certain point they talk about equity and justice, and then here you are talking about how, the minimum wage and all that.
Oh no, so, that's really good, really good.
To me, at the back of my head, I'm like, it's very important to have all this done, industrialization, but if we do not have things like equity and justice, it is all in vain.
That's
so. What is the linkage?
That's very, very
now let's dig into
fact, that part on equity and justice shouldn't be a standalone. Let us see it in how wealth is created, how decent jobs are created. I was telling you about the case we have. I won't say the company, but it's a plantation company, and it's mistreating its women workers. All workers, but women. Mostly. It's terrible. And we said no. You know, so we need to rethink what kind of model, you know, how do we create decent jobs, and also to stop our people, our children going out. We are exporting our children, you know. We are exporting our children. For me, when I look at the figure, remittances, you know, going up, I remember those are our children. But if we make our economy right, our children would have decent jobs. So I wanted also to talk about, because I was talking about the model of industrialization, issue of import substitution. We need to be clear. What are we import substituting? Because we need to have competitive. Can you compete? You know, where can we be competitive? Because it doesn't make sense that you add value on a product where you are not competitive. It comes on the market, you know, even if you raise the taxes and it's cheaper. Ugandans, human beings, we think with our pockets. Our pockets are not patriotic, by the way. So Nora, if I see your product there, and I see another product from another country, which is cheaper, I will buy the other one.
Which is cheaper.
Yeah, I'm patriotic, but my pocket is not. So when we are looking at industrialization, we need to do a deeper analysis. Then I have also talked about the industrial model. Do we need industrial parks? That's also another area for analysis. Another model, you can ask me, what other model is there? You remember way back, I don't know whether you have ever gone to Masaka. I give an example of crepes. There was a factory making pineapple juice. Wonderful, you know, in Masaka. So the whole hinterland was producing pineapples and making crepes, you know. Sometimes I was young, but I remember crepes. It was such a nice drink. But it means that you are stimulating production. So again, we need to also to agree, is that industrial park model, is it working? Who is there? Are there backward and forward linkages? Do they have decent jobs? Or are they bringing sweatshops from China, from Bangladesh to here, so that our girls are just sewing and getting peanuts. So we need to rethink the industrialization
We really need
model.
to think the industrialization model. Like you said, the backward linkages are very, very, very important in that regard, in making sure that the people get the jobs, and then even for the products itself. There's also one thing that actually went through my mind as we were discussing. When you say that our economy cannot just be an open economy and we expect good out of it. But there is also one thing about the attitude of some Ugandans, thinking that actually things from abroad, things that are not made within Uganda, are actually the best. You understand? So you find someone opting for something that has just neighboring Kenya here, and someone feels like this is actually better. And I'm just thinking, how are we going to help Ugandans change in that regard for our own economic benefit?
I agree entirely, Nora. There is that ingrained in us that when something comes from outside, it's okay. But I think also it's also the issue of standards.
Yeah.
We need to put confidence of Ugandans in our products. So our products have to be of high quality and standard, And this is also what's missing out in the manifesto. Today, it's when you look at all these issues we have been talking about, by the way, you asked a question, who is in the driving seat, who is doing all that? Government has to do it, but in the manifesto is private sector led. Private sector has never led anything unless there is a profit.
Oh, yes.
And our private sector is young. In fact, the manifesto talks about that clearly, analyzes the private sector, how it's weak. Very good analysis, you read it. Very good analysis. So, for today, you can't say private sector led. You can't tell your baby, and you look at the baby and you say, this baby is weak, needs to grow up, but he's going to lead me out of poverty. So we need to ascertain the roles. What should be the role of the private sector? What should be the role of government? For me, that's really, really, really very, very important. So and on that issue of the government, all these issues we have been talking about, it needs resources and money. In fact, all these issues we have been talking about trade and trade policy. Today, there are two ministries which are key, mainly agriculture, because we have been talking about production.
Yes.
Ministry of Trade.
Yes.
Standards. The issue you are raising, that Ugandans don't want Ugandan products, is because of standards. I have been talking to people and they say, Jane, Odi, you know Odi? Says, Odi. No, I can't take that Odi. I buy American Garden peanut butter because of that standard. So put money in UNBS. But today, the entire Ministry of Trade gets between 0.3 to 0.4% of the total budget. But we are talking, whatever we have been talking about, sexuality markets, exports, standards, that's Ministry of Trade.
That's its docket, yes.
So, Nora, if somebody tells you, I love you so much, you say, sure, please show, So we need NRM to show, put more money in Ministry of Trade. Agriculture, the budget, I think it has been, how much? It's also very low. Okay, yet you look at the ministry, we are talking about extension services. These people can't. Because for the model also for increasing production is inputs. Inputs, but inputs without a concrete market, it's a no-go.
It is.
You are keeping those people even in deeper poverty. because they have taken time, they have bought the seeds, they have weeded, they produce their maize, a kilo, 500, 100. Then government, you come in, okay, we are going to give money to so and so to buy maize. Why don't you make sure there is a minimum, not maximum, minimum price? So government has to organize that. So government, when you ask who should be in charge, it's government. You know, the moment you say private sector-led development, then FDI, they are so high on FDI, by the way. They talk about FDI, they will bring in capital. FDI rarely bring capital. They organize capital here, you know. They bring it, it's a fallacy that FDI, they bring in capital, they bring in technology. It isn't true. And for people who have done economics, there is what they call decapitalization. What happens that investors sometimes, they bring in very little money. Then they mobilize locally here. Then they collect all this money, like these people who are selling us air. They sell us air and they mobilize, you know. You just sit down and look at how much money is mobilized. Because our economy is liberalized, our financial sector, you bring in money, you take out. They take out all that money. They earn the money in Uganda shillings, they take out dollars. So that means that there is that effect which they call decapitalization. Instead of the economy growing, there is decapitalization, or your capital is taken out. And that's why today we are borrowing. We are depending on FDI to bring in capital, and we are also borrowing. Our debt today is almost 50% to our GDP. In fact, when you look at our budget, one of the top expenditures is servicing our debt. You know, so there's a lot we need to rethink. This is a good document, as documents go, but as Ugandans, we need to sit, we need to rethink all these good. You know, like they say, the devil is in the details.
Yeah, I see there is actually a lot of detail that needs actually analyzing and rethinking. And when you look at it basically looks good. The points look good. All that the manifesto is actually advancing and looking at, it is all good. But the detail in it, the nitty-gritty of who steers what, when, and who benefits, and how it's done, and then the processes. It's something that really needs to be looked into detail there. One of the things that I need to understand is what the manifesto highlights in regards to things to do with health, and then policies to do with education, and how that translates to us in an economic sense. But not even that. Now that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we shall dig into that later.
Okay.
Let's just go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. The whole issue of health and education is also covered. It's also covered in the manifesto, and health and education are very, very critical because that's also investment. You know, in fact, some people think it's an expenditure. No, but it's an investment. You are investing in your people so that they can be able to produce. So if we look at it as an investment, you know, then I think it would be also good to put more money in investment. But what I also want to, when you look at the whole issue around health and COVID, which we want to talk about, is also covered about vaccines and so on. But you know what COVID has taught us? That we need to go back to the roots. Issues of washing hands.
basic
that's
issues.
the primary health care.
Yeah.
Washing hands, being clean, eating
well.
Well, when you say eating well, people will say that you are talking about KFC and chicken. No, eating healthy. Eating healthy, eating purpose, encouraging people to grow purpose. There is a way that system has broken down a bit, when it comes to primary health care.
Yes.
You remember that way back, the systems were there. The village health officers, taking people to the health centers to be taught. This is how you feed your child. You wash. This is you keep your latrine. Today, when I was driving on radio, I think it was CBS. Somebody was talking. Is it from Kalungu? They have no latrines. Latrines, So what COVID has told us is that we need to go back to basics, and I hope the manifestos do that, because again, they tell us that the way they are lumping. We have done the health care centers, a care center for what, Molago, what, No, it isn't that. We need to go back to the basics, teaching people how to wash the latrines, how to keep it, how to smoke it, being clean and healthy. I think that's where we need to go. Then also education. Again, we need a rethink, because they are talking about skilling and all that. But again, we need to look at the entire health education system. You talked about calling upon the people breaking down these issues. I would also like to call upon Ugandans, fellow citizens. Let us not just shout, manifesto has been launched. You question, what is in it for me? Is there has the manifesto talked about taxes? Who is going to pay the taxes? Are the taxes being reduced or not? Where? The budget. Are there new fundamental change? You remember NRM when it was coming, the issue of fundamental change. Are there any fundamental changes here? Is there a budget somewhere where a manifesto is saying that for us, we are going to increase the budget. We are going to ring fence some monies for maternal health so that a woman shouldn't die when giving birth. So what are those new departures which you can touch on and be able to hold that government accountable? I tell people that there is no test run. There is no test run. In case a new government comes into power, it's like you're on a treadmill. You jump, the treadmill is running. So our parties, the different parties, need to think through what they are going to do. But what I see is that we are going to do that. We are going to create wealth. How we are going to do it? Digging deeper. What are the challenges now? What different things are you going to do? I miss out on that.
Yes.
Yes. For me, what I want to see are some radical departures. And also for somebody to be able to say, this is not working. We are going to this. The budget to Ministry of Trade, it has been 0.3, 0.4. We are taking it to 20%. That's a departure, and this is what we are going to fund because this is what we want to achieve. So for me, talking to fellow Ugandans, we need to dig deeper. By the way, this is our money. Whatever they put here, this is what we are going to do. They are going to use our money. So we need to say, my dear, don't go there.
Yeah.
That one we have tested it, it isn't working.
Yeah.
Go this way. And we need to monitor. You said you are going to do this, are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And for the newcomers, let us put them to the test. Is it going to work? Is it real? Is it feasible? There are so many things which we can do, you know. Like the saying goes, if wishes were horses, everybody would ride, you know.
Yes.
But we need to look at the reality. Is
Yes.
it real? Is it feasible? Is it going to work? How are the dots adding up? If you are telling me you are going to create jobs, are they decent? Is the way you have said, will it be able to create those decent jobs?
Now, as we wind up, Jen is from SEATINI, and your very last remarks to Ugandans there, is it the same message?
It's the same message.
Yes.
Ugandans, please let us read these manifestos. Let us ask some questions. Let us make some demands. Because 5 years down the road, we need to be able to ask, to be able to analyze, to be able to say, you didn't do ABCD, why didn't you do it? You know, so let us be keen, let us be citizens.
That is it.